Welcome to Blackout Studios. In today's video, we're going to be covering this: an easy, inexpensive, do-it-yourself, EMP-resistant container. That's a tongue twister. Okay, the parts list. Very straightforward, very few items. So you'll want to find a galvanized trash can or container. Here's an example of one. This is a 6-gallon. You can get a few of these, or you can get a couple of the larger variety. I don't recall off the top of my head how big those are. I'd say at least 4 times this size. Maybe they're 30 gallons or so. And you'll want to make sure that the container comes with a tight-fitting lid. All right, that's really important. You want this air gap here to be as minimal as possible. The next item you'll want is some type of a Faraday fabric. This here, you can see it's a flexible fabric, but it's interwoven in the fabric with a conductive metal material. I'm not quite sure what type of material it is, tin or something like that. I got this on Amazon. It was fairly inexpensive. I will provide a link in the description below to an Amazon list for all these items if you want to make your life easy. The next thing you'll want is some of this conductive duct tape. This will be used to close up any of the protrusions into the container, where this handle here or this handle here, and also the seam. Here's a seam, so you want to tape that seam over so that there's no avenue for that high EM pulse to penetrate into the airspace. You're basically creating a Faraday cage, right? Then you'll want some scrap cardboard, good old prime box. Get a few of these. We'll use this to insulate the inside of the box and to prevent our critical electronics from actually touching the exterior surface of the box. So it doesn't have to be any kind of fancy cardboard. It just needs to be pretty well dispersed so that it creates that insulation, that air gap. And then some masking tape to keep the cardboard in place. And of course, trusty pair of shears to shape the cardboard. All right, with that, we'll get into the next step is actually creating this bucket. So the creation of the bucket is also very straightforward. At this point, I'd like to note that depending on the bucket and how much machining grease is left on the bucket, you may want to add one additional early step, which is to clean around the seams and the protrusions so that you get good adhesion for your tape. I have 4 buckets of varying sizes. I didn't have this issue for the first couple, and then did get a bucket that tape just wouldn't stick to because of leftover machining oil. Good idea, and you only need to prepare the area within a couple of inches of whatever protrusion or seam you're going to be covering. You don't have to clean the whole bucket out, so that's up to you. But a good dish detergent is a great degreaser. Try it, I guess. If the tape's not sticking, you may want to degrease it. The first step would be to cover all of the protrusions with a bit of tape, right? And it's not rocket science. You can just literally tear with your fingertips a piece of tape and make sure that you have good adhesion and that it's completely covered so that there's no air gap, there's no little sneaky way for EM to get electromagnetic radiation to get past that shield. So here's the lid. That's it. It's just got, in this case, it's just got 2 protrusions. So we covered that. And then here's the container. And you can see inside the container here at the top, this is the seam, the vertical seam that runs down the height of the container. And then in the very bottom, where the bottom piece and the sidewalls come together, I've just put little pieces of tape and just overlapped them. So there it is. Very, very straightforward. So once you have this, you're like 80% of the way there. Okay, the next step is to take your cardboard and you want to line the inside of this container with this cardboard in a way that when you place items in the container, that they are not in contact with the walls or the lid or the base of the container. That's just a matter of taking a bunch of scrap boxes and shaping them, one nice round one for the bottom and then some rectangular pieces overlapping for the walls. I throw a piece of cardboard over the top also. That way, when I'm pushing on the lid, if there's any piece of electronics protruding, I'm not pushing the lid onto that or the Faraday fabric onto that piece of electronics. So you'll do that, you'll get your cardboard in there, and then the next piece is the Faraday fabric. So the Faraday fabric comes in fairly large, pieces here. This one's 3 feet by I think it was like 10 feet or something like that. So you'll need to shape this down. And the purpose of this is you want to cut a piece large enough that it goes over the top of the lid and, hangs over by, let's say, 3 inches per side, right? Around the whole diameter of the container. And that's just so that you'll load your container with your electronics. First, you'll put a piece of cardboard that caps those electronics. Then you'll put the piece of Faraday fabric over top of that, making sure that it kind of equally hangs over the bucket in all sides. And then you'll pop the lid on nice and tight. And the Faraday fabric creates that extra layer of electrical distribution, sealing up the lid underneath the lid, and it also occupies this airspace, right? It's not perfectly round, the lid, or the container isn't perfectly round. There could be an air gap for that EM radiation to sneak in there. Remember, this is really a short pulse type of EM. It's sneaky. It can get in there. So you want to take up all that airspace with this. You're in contact with the bucket and the lid, and it just really seals up the whole electromagnetic container very well. So cardboard, put your electronics, more cardboard, layer of fabric, and then the lid, and you're good to go. You've got an EMP resistant container with your critical electronics stored within. Okay, so when considering contents of this EMP container, we have to put ourselves kind of in place and think about, what's the world around us after an EMP has gone off. So again, not getting into any great detail, but if there's an EMP, anything with a small microchip in it, integrated circuit, is fried. It's gone. And of course, this depends on the proximity relative to where the EMP went off. But let's just say you're within the kill zone. All the handheld electronics, computers, laptops, that stuff is all gone, right? Power grid's gone. Cell phones are gone. In that world, what do you need? What gives you the edge, right? Because it's going to be chaos. To go from an electrified life to the 1750 life instantaneously is going to be a pretty traumatic experience. Many of these things are for tactical reasons, for self-defense, because if you have a bit of electronics and a little bit of power versus another person who does not, another group who does not, you're definitely going to have an edge. What kind of stuff should we put into our container? Well, I'd say maybe the most important thing to put in the container right off the bat is a simple AM/FM radio, something that has the emergency broadcast network available to it. AM/FM crank would be great. I actually keep a couple of these in here. This one in particular is solar powered. Actually, this one's solar powered also. And why is this so important? Well, maybe the first way you're going to know that an EMP event has actually taken place. Let's say middle of the night, I can hear when the power goes out. Fan stops running, the kid's noise machine turns off, and you just know, right? Especially if you don't have a generator, or even if you do have a generator, you know the power's. Now, in the case of an EMP, the generator probably won't go off, but you'll hear the electricity go down. Is it a local event, town-wide? Is it regional? Is it national? How do you know? Well, turn on the radio. This is battery powered, or you crank it in the case of this one, and you see if you can get a signal. If you hear normal radio station playing, then okay, your house or your neighborhood went out. It's localized. But if this is dead and you don't hear anything, or all you hear is the emergency broadcast, there's a pretty good chance that an EMP's gone off. And that's going to dictate your next steps, right? You're going to follow your preparedness plan in the event of an EMP, which is different than, your preparedness plan for a local power outage or a flood or a tornado or whatever. If you want some help with that plan, I encourage you to visit our website, which is bereadyplanner.com. It goes over a lot of stages of preparedness, and it really focuses on blackouts, national or worldwide blackouts, because in our opinion, any type of significant crisis will inevitably lead to an extended power outage, probably a permanent power outage. Anyway, handheld or portable radio, basic AM/FM, something that's emergency broadcast capable. Okay, so that's very important. The next would be a ham radio. Here's the ubiquitous Baofeng UV5R. These are very inexpensive. Buy a couple. Program them, put them in there, keep the batteries out of them, and just have them in there, because any of these that are outside of the containers are fried. Okay, next really important items would be battery chargers and rechargeable batteries. You're going to put in your container probably some sensitive rifle scopes, other electronics. Those all run on battery. How many batteries can you store? Eventually they're going to wear out. Some of those, more capable thermal scopes really chew through batteries very quickly. And so having, CR123 battery rechargers, AA battery rechargers, and rechargeable batteries stashed in this box, you don't have to really worry about the batteries getting fried in an EMP. I just like to store them together. Here's my charger. This would get fried. This has a circuit in it. So if this is outside of your container, EMP goes off, this is a goner. So I like to have these, just stored together locally. It's just there in case of a terrible emergency. All right, so rechargeable batteries, simple flashlights. These have LEDs in them. There's a pretty high likelihood that LEDs can pop. So I like to keep a few different varieties of lights in there, headlamp, handheld flashlight. Okay, how about a calculator? I haven't used this one, in a long time, probably since high school. Solar powered. This is great. Someday life will get back on track. You may end up bartering and trading, and there'll be some currency system, or you may want to calculate, how to build a structure. You may have some books that teach you how to build houses or underground structure. You may need to do some calculations, and this can come in real handy. Again, this is a spare. I wouldn't use this every day. Throw it in the EMP protected enclosure. It'll survive. Okay, a car battery charger. Someone may have a generator. You may create a wind turbine or a hydroelectric power source, right? And how do you store that energy? So that's a challenge we face today, right? How do you store energy? The wind turbine's going and it's creating electricity. You want to be able to use that electricity at night. Car batteries are going to be just fine. A battery itself will not get fried by an EMP, but this could. So if this is sitting in your garage and gets zapped, it's no good. You can't charge battery. But if you put it in your EMP container, now after the events happened, there's car batteries laying around everywhere. You can charge them up if you have some electric generation source. And again, that could be a wind turbine, it could be solar, it could be hydroelectric, any number of ways. Maybe we'll do a video on that also. And along that same lines, this is a dedicated solar charger for batteries. So this has an integrated battery control, battery charge and control mechanism, and you can see it's got the clamps on the end here, and so you can put your battery in a field out in the sun and trickle charge it up. Okay, wind turbines, solar panels. By the way, solar panels alone on their own should not be damaged by an EMP. They're just a grid of photoreactive carbon. Some of them are smart, but most of them are dumb. They just create a charge, and the charge goes out the wires. And it's at the other end of the wires that is the delicate piece. So there should be solar panels available after the crisis. And so you may have to become a battlefield electrician or electrical engineer. And that profession needs a multimeter, right? You need to be able to measure voltage, impedance, AC, DC, all that continuity, all those things. So you'll want a fluke meter or similar. These are not super expensive. Kind of buying it and then you're stashing it away. Hopefully never use it. But again, lifesaver. If you have this available and it's operational, the sky's the limit for you to become an impromptu electrical engineer or electrician. Let's see. Okay, next, power tools, right? So the tool itself should survive. However, the charging mechanism will not, right? This has a complicated battery charging circuit in it. That'll get fried. If you have, a few extra of these laying around, throw one in your EMP container. I typically run with one brand. I'm not a fanboy. It's just convenient. My first portable drill was a DeWalt, and I recognize the efficiency if you just have one type of battery that can run all your tools. So I've stuck with DeWalt, which accidentally was a pretty good decision. So the battery charger, and I throw a spare battery in there. I have like 4 or 5 of these laying around now, and I'm not a contractor by trade, so I really only empty 1 or 2 at a time, and I can have 1 or 2 charged. There you go. Battery charger for your hand tools and a spare battery. Another really important piece of kit, and this one's a little on the larger side, but really extremely important, is an inverter, right? So this takes your 12 volts DC from your car battery and then converts it to 120 volts AC. So 12 volts in, 120 volts out. So very important to have one of those. This is 2 kilowatts. You can probably get away with a 1 kilowatt. Again, it's the end of the world as we know it. So, 1 kilowatt is better than 0 kilowatts. So if you're having some analysis paralysis on, should I afford a 2 kilowatt or a 1 kilowatt? Just get the 1 kilowatt. Get something, right? All right, let me consult my list here. I don't see any other goodies I've taken out. Make sure I've covered them all. Okay, 2 key ones. Cell phones will be dead. iPads will be dead if they were outside of the container. However, you could take an old tablet and one that you no longer use, maybe one that the battery doesn't last super long on, and throw it in there. But before you throw it in there, you should load up some important documents, right? Maybe take pictures of your driver's license, your passport, take pictures of, your deed, any of that stuff. I mean, who knows? Maybe Law and Order returns, the government returns, and they'll want to know that actually is your house, or, that actually is you, or something like that. It takes up no space. The other thing you may want to load on there are some digital 3D maps of your region. 3D digital maps. You can also upload some reference material, like medical reference material, or building construction reference material, or chemistry reference material, how to make soap. You can have all these things in printed form, and that's important. We'll have some other preparedness videos that goes into books and what you should have. But this could be a way to preserve a digital copy of similar materials or extra materials, right? Instead of taking up tons of space. And you may have to run, you may have to bug out, and then you grab your bucket and you have it instead of carrying 400 pounds of books with you. say it's 3 seconds without self-defense, 3 minutes without air, 3 days without water, 3 weeks without food, right? So the first one was self-defense. Put yourself in the situation. The power's gone out. It's a crisis. People will go crazy. People who you think are nice, friendly today, if they get hungry enough, cold enough, thirsty enough, desperate enough, they're going to do some irrational and violent things. Safety is number one, okay? Along those lines, you'll want to put in your EMP containers some of your nicer equipment. Any of your scopes that you have mounted on your rifles that have illuminated reticles, those illuminated reticles will probably get fried, right? If they're outside of the EMP container. Red dots, those will get fried. So you may want to store them exclusively in your container. You know, put your thermal scopes in there, put your night vision devices in there. Any of those kinds of things. Yes, I agree. It's a pain in the ass. Every time you go to a training exercise, you go to the range, having to take that scope and remount it, re-zero it on your rifle. But don't you check zero every time you go to the range anyway? I do, right? Or get a container that's tall enough that in the case of like an AR-15 would hold the upper. So you just take the upper off, put the whole upper in there, right? With the scope device attached to the upper. And then it's easy, right? It's 2 pins and you're back in action. Think of this. And again, I know it's a hassle. It's one extra step of having to get the stuff out of the container, but you will have no warning for an EMP event. This is not like a solar flare that we're going to see 2 days in advance and there's going to be warnings and you'll have time to kind of get your ducks in a row. An EMP will happen without warning. The first indication that an EMP has gone off is everything is dead. It's all gone. You don't want your really fancy thermal camera or thermal rifle scope sitting on your bench with zero protection. Store it in there and keep all my kit in a big container, right? My whole vest, everything, because it's got flashlights in it, it's got radios in it, it's got all that. So I just strip it off when I'm not training, put it in the container. It's a big container and it's protected. It's no different than having it in a safe or in a closet. You just pop the lid open, put your gear on, and you're ready to go. But now when you're not wearing it, it's protected in the safe because again, there won't be any warning if this occurs. Fingers crossed, God forbid it actually happens, but when it does happen, it'll be quite the disaster. So yeah, so that's the contents. Maybe I missed a couple things. I will have a list in the description below this video with a comprehensive list. I'll also have a link to Amazon. Save your search time if you want, and it's stuff that I've actually looked through and bought myself. It's stuff I would recommend, so you can go there and make your life a little easier. So that's the contents. I'd just like to say thank you for watching this video on the EMP-proof container. I hope you found it instructive and informative. Please leave a comment. Tell us how we can do better. Tell us some things that we forgot. I'm sure there's a number of things that we could think of to add to this list. Speaking of the list, in the description below will be a link to not just everything we talked about here, but there's definitely some things that I forgot to put on the table. So that'll be part of that list down below. Check out our companion website, BeReadyPlanner.com. It has a lot of information there, more than we could put in a video. It's got links to other videos, links to government websites, government studies, scholarly documentation and journal articles. It's got lists and basically is laid out just in the sense of sort of ramping up your preparedness capabilities. So please check that out. Leave us a comment, a like, tell us what we forgot, and really appreciate your time today. Hope you have a good day. Bye-bye.